So, Ervin, you're talking about a new consciousness for, I think, for a new world is what you're saying. I know that you've talked about a new thinking for a world in crisis. It's also been said that we are evolution becoming conscious of evolution. What does that phrase signify to you?
Well, evolution happens, and it's driven by information that very often is not a fully conscious information. Because things are happening around us. We get signals, we get perceptions. Other species evolve also. Everything is changing. But for the first time, I think in history, we can become aware of the fact that we have an evolution that we can have a say about, that we can control to some extent. I don't like the term control, but I use it in a cybernetic sense of being able to guide a process, you know, constantly interact with a process, you know. And conscious evolution means that we can, to some extent, become masters of our destiny. We can change the direction. Here, let me add a concept which is, I think, is so very relevant today. When you get to these non-linear points, which are often in science called about bifurcation points.
The tipping points.
The tipping points, yes. Then there's a great deal of freedom, because the past, the heavy hand of the past, is freed. We no longer are determined by what happened before. Because many things are possible at this point. Only staying the same way as we have is not. Or going strictly back to exactly where we were is also not possible. So we are at a point where we are free to act, free to choose. Not absolutely free, because everything has constraints, everything has limits to it, and there are always possibilities and potentialities. But there is a vast change, a vast range of things that we could choose from, which way we go forward. And conscious evolution means being conscious of our freedom to choose. Just as an example, you say, what kind of choose we can choose from? I mean, we could choose to try to live with the same banking system, just to give an example, that we have had before, and we try to just to make do with it. Or we could try to create a new way to use money. It's entirely possible, you know. We could try to put up with the old political systems, the old educational systems, or we could try to move forward and try to create a more humane and more sustainable kind of a world. These are the challenges that we have before us. Being conscious of evolution means being conscious that we are at a bifurcation point where we can choose. And this choice is what is the key, I think, to this whole epoch of a world shift.
Ervin, over the years, you've made great efforts to try and bring together leading scientists and leading thinkers of spirituality, to try to unify these two areas of science and spirituality. Why do you feel this is so important?
There is no evolution, no shift, without a spiritual element. We cannot do it purely rationally. Of course, I don't think we can do it only, you know, purely by intuition, by this higher spirituality. But the spirituality is an absolutely necessary element of creating an alliance between science and the great movements, the great traditions, and the great capacities for spirituality. It is so much a part of human experience. We are not just thinking rational beings, we are also deeply feeling spiritual beings. And to bring these two aspects together, then we have a broader, better conception of the world around us. Because then we perceive not only what immediately meets our eyes and ears, and we don't just try to manipulate what is all immediately around us, but we see that how much more there is to the world, and how much more we are connected with the world. So I think to make people aware of the fact that through spirituality you get insights, you get connections, that you cannot get otherwise. That is a very basic element today. And it's not so completely divorced from or different from science, because in science we know that we are connected. We are more and more connected, going through to the, if you like, to the quantum level. But in all kinds of hidden or semi-hidden ways, we have a strong, constant connection, constant information exchange, constantly being part of one another. And if we can bring this knowledge, this conviction that these connections are true, and the science tells us that they are true, you know, then we won't create this artificial gap which says you are either a scientific rational person or you are a spiritual dreamer, you know. And that's a very toxic, very noxious and difficult and dangerous point of view. I hope that the new science is moving toward a direction of recognizing the insight of spirituality as having a real basis in the cosmos, in the physical universe, and the new spirituality recognizing that we have tremendous faculties for understanding the world, and that together, the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, so to speak, or the spirituality and the rationality of our mind, together they can create a more full, a more complete human being that is more capable of taking charge of his and her own evolution.
Now, I have to ask you, Ervin, there's been a lot of talk in the recent years about the Mayan calendar, about the date of 21st of December or 22nd December 2012. There's been a lot of fear-mongering about this date, which may put some people off this subject. But I'd like to ask you, what do you feel is the significance of this date?
Well, I'm amazed that I find more and more people are telling me that there's something tremendous, something awful is going to happen, and that people are thinking of having to move way out into the country and having their own supplies to survive, you know. And that is, I think, it's completely a fiction. It's completely unreal. But there is something to this date. There is a coincidence, if it's really a coincidence. I don't believe that anything is truly, absolutely a coincidence. But it seems like there's a coincidence between ancient, traditional insight, prophecies, if you like, not just by the Mayans, that's the most famous, the Mayan stone prophecies, but the Hopis, the Sanskrits, the Hindus, a lot of different cultures, even astrology comes in, says that there are these big phases in human development, in historical development, and one of these long phases is coming to an end, precisely at the end of 2012. Okay. Coincidence with what? Coincidence with the fact that also the world is becoming so close to its unsustainable tipping point that it could well be that a basic tipping point will be reached when the ancient prophecy says that we are reaching it, you know. The world conspires with the old insights, traditions. Therefore, let's make the best of it. Let's make good use of this. Because very often things happen when we really believe that they can happen. It is known, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, as self-fulfilling prophecies. So of course, they have been real prophecies about the end of 2012. But if there is a critical mass of human populations who believe that the end of 2012 is truly a tipping point that is not the end of the world, but a change, a shift in the world, then something really serious could happen. I don't think the world will change all at once on December 21 or 22, 2012. But around that time, a famous chaos point, a point of non-irreversibility, a point of no return could be reached, a point of decision where you say, we are now committed to going in this direction. Points of no return, you know, are known in navigation when you are, for example, crossing a major ocean and you reach more than half point, you know now it's closer to the other side than to where you came from. So if you have to go someplace, you have to go forward, you know. That's the point of no return, where you simply cannot turn back anymore. And that kind of a point could well be reached at the end of 2012, if many people believe that it will be reached.
Mm.